can start. So I'm Roberto Cuccu. I work in the user services at ECMWF. And together with my colleague Uroosa Farooq from EUMETSAT, we prepared this training webinar about European Weather Cloud tenancy administration. So during this webinar, we will basically start with providing a brief introduction for anyone attending that is not yet familiar with the initiative. So recapping also how to get access to the cloud, to the service. And then we will pass to provide an overview about the overall tenancy administration and its usage. We'll show also some information about the accounting of the resources within the cloud. And then we will pass it to a demo focused on tenant administration features on the Morpheus interface. And then we will conclude with some additional complementary information. So let's start. So the European Weather Cloud is a joint initiative from ECMWF and EUMETSAT that provides a cloud-based collaboration platform to serve the needs of the European meteorological community and its users. So basically it provides an environment where the users can share and collaborate with also data access in primarily to the repository of both organizations, it's ECMWF and EUMETSAT, but with also the possibility for users to upload and work with their own data, computing and storage infrastructure, and additional tools and services that help the users to work with this infrastructure and services. There are also training materials, documentation, and support resources, and then all the flexibility that a cloud platform can provide to the users, either in the deployment, but also in the management of the deployed resources. So the cloud is basically open to the users of the member cooperating state of ECMWF and EUMETSAT, and is also available for research in the context of the ECMWF special projects and EUMETSAT R&D call. The platform is also open to partners and members of the European meteorological infrastructure, which includes also organizations like EUMETNET. And finally, also, of course, it's available for the internal usage at ECMWF and EUMETSAT in the scope of their own mandate. So to get access to the cloud and to request a tenancy, which is the environment where it's possible to use the cloud and deploy resources, the default workflow that foresees that the users needing a tenancy contact an authorizing officer, which is basically the computing representative of member cooperating states countries of ECMWF and EUMETSAT. If the request is reviewed and approved, the comp rep can raise a request to EWC support team so that it can follow up and create a tenancy and provide access to the final user. There is also an alternative flow where the user might get in contact for advice or requesting a tenancy directly to the EWC support team. In that case, we will involve and consult the authorizing officer to review the request, and in case of approval, we follow up also in this case to create a tenancy and provide access to the final user. So as I mentioned, there are opportunities for research in the context of the ECMWF special projects or EUMETSAT R&D call. For both of them, there is a fixed deadline on the 30th of June that we just passed, but it's possible also for the ECMWF special project to submit a late request for project proposals till the end of the year. Or in the context of the EUMETSAT R&D call, there is a possibility all over the year to submit a small fast-track project to request the resources. So now let's provide an overview about the usage and administration scenario. I already introduced the figure of the authorizing officer, which is basically the comp rep of a member cooperating state of ECMWF and EUMETSAT. And in this case, the comp rep might authorize and also make sure that a requester is aware and agrees with the terms and conditions of the usage of the European Weather Cloud and provide access, so authorize access for a user for getting working with the tenancy. So this user becomes a tenant administrator, so administrator of this tenancy. And the tenancy is basically an isolated environment where tenancy administrator and users can deploy resources on the cloud and manage also and work with the services that are also available. A tenancy could sit on just one side of the cloud, for instance, in this case at ECMWF, but can be EUMETSAT, or in both of them. The driver of this decision is basically on the type of use case that the project for the tenancy has been created is foresees, or and also for the type of data that are required for this kind of project. As mentioned, there is the possibility where, let's say, tenancy is created also on both sides of the cloud. So the tenancy administrator can then also provide access to other users within the tenancy that don't have the same privileges as an administrator, but this user can still, let's say, work with the cloud features and deploy resources, work with them for different purposes like development, system administration, and the setup of application and services. This user can also provide access to the deployed resources. It can be also access to virtual machines to other users, and also in this case they are considered tenancy users. And also in this case, everyone needs to be aware and agrees with the terms and conditions of the usage of the cloud. So tenancy administrator and tenancy user can also deploy and set up application and services that are exposed outside, and these are considered tenancy-based service. So services that are deployed on a tenancy level and might be, let's say, available for end users. So access to end user can happen even without control for in the case of a service that is publicly available and open, or can be even, let's say, foreseeing an authentication authorization part. So in this case, with access control. So we want to remind also a remark that the tenancy administrator is the ultimate responsible of all the activities that are performed on the tenancy that is assigned to, and is also in charge to keep the environment as much as secure as possible, protecting it from unauthorized access and usage. And also the usage that is done of the tenancy resources shall, let's say, be in line to what to the purpose that was agreed and discussed with the authorizing officer at the beginning. So in terms of data, software, and content and information that is uploaded and uploaded on the cloud and where the tenancy used by tenancy administrator and tenancy user, we also to highlight that the tenancy administrator or tenancy users retain the full ownerships and rights on this data or content. So based on the experience and the past experience and also the question that we received, we also collected some guidelines or suggestions that you might consider when administering tenancy. So in terms of networking, we always advise to reduce as much as possible the usage of public IP in order to reduce the exposed surface over the internet, which can be, let's say, attacked from malicious sources. We also advise to use a restricted firewalling where specifying as much as possible source and destination information or ports and protocols. Disable unneeded service that might be keep listening on some port. In case they are not needed, they can be shut down. Use secure protocols, so with encryption like HTTPS, and finally also use intrusion detection software. In this case, we also remind that our VM virtual machine templates are provided with fail to ban already pre-installed, which helps to prevent forced brute attacks to the virtual machines. But you can install additional one or change the configuration as you need. So for what concerning software and deployments, we advise to keep the software up to date, and this includes not only security repository that might be already for which the automatic updates might be already enabled on the system, but all over the software shall be updated, included also the one that doesn't come from the official repository from the system packages, from the system. And in case it is installed some software that doesn't come with the official repository, also suggest to use reputable sources for it. Another good practice is also to keep application logs for debugging purposes and also to keep track of what is happening at the application level. And finally, an important advice is use automations tool for the deployment and configuration of the resources and the application. These leveraging some configuration management tools like Ansible or scripting. And this is important to make your environment as much as reproducible as possible, can be also redundant, and also make it resilient in case it's needed to recover the full environment from scratch. So for what concerning the user accounts on the virtual machines, we also suggest to limit the access to the virtual machines to the minimum number of persons, and also to assign the minimum number of privileges that is required, and also to keep disabled password authentication to the virtual machines. This is the default from the virtual machine templates that we provide, and we, let's say, advise to keep it like that and use just SSH key authentication to log in inside the virtual machine. So proceeding with the backups, we also recommend to perform, let's say, a data backups. This can be, let's say, from most critical data, especially, and you can redund them either in other virtual machine on the clouds or using object storage, or keep a copy also in a separated premises. And together, but not replacing, you can also perform virtual machines backup. So you should not rely just on this option, but you can use these together with the data backup and also with the automated deployment to make your environment as much resilient as possible. So last bullet is about the resource management. I will connect to this in a minute when talking about the accounting. So tenant administrators are also invited to keep monitoring the resource consumption against the provided quota and budgets, so the allocation, and also to consider leveraging the possibility for VARs capacity. This means basically that you can, let's say, at a certain point in time, deploy a bigger number of workloads and resources on the cloud, and in other period less. This is an example, to make an example, so we do that when we support the training courses, our training courses, where we set up virtual classrooms, we deploy more than 50 virtual machines altogether, with the configuration fully automated, and we just keep them for 1 or 2 weeks for the duration of a course, and we take them down, and then we repeat it again on a next course. This is an example on use and leveraging this burst and the flexibility on the cloud. So another advice is to remove unused VM. So this not only for, let's say, reducing the consumption of the resources, and for that we remind that we keep accounting on the VM even if they are shut down, because these resources, even if you shut down, are still kept from your own usage, and they are not available and free to use from other users. So this is a good practice to remove unused VM completely in case not needed. And then, of course, we provide the possibility to update your quota or budgets at any time whenever the project requires. I will come back to this point soon. So with that, I want to introduce the topic of the accounting within the Open Weather Cloud. So the accounting is basically a mechanism that is implemented for ensuring the correct and fair redistribution of the resources across the user of the cloud, and also for monitoring the consumption against the provided share of resources across the usage. So to clarify, there is no an actual charging in terms of money to the usage of the cloud for member cooperating states, but this mechanism is just to ensure this fair redistribution. So for that, it was introduced a cloud billing unit, or also known as EWC unit, and this is, let's say, the equivalent of the system billing unit for the ECMWF users that are working on the HPC facility, and the concept was inherited from that. So basically, this unit is the measure that is used for accounting for the resource usage on the cloud. Each member of cooperating states is provided with a total budget of this unit, which we call it allocation, and also a tenancy as soon as it is created is provided with a budget of this unit, an annual budget, which is deducted for the total member of cooperating state allocation under which the tenancy belongs to. So the billing period is hourly, and beside this budget in terms of unit, we have set on the cloud also at tenancy level, also resource quotas. So quotas are basically an hard limit for different type of available resources on the cloud that cannot be exceeded at any point in time. So to make an example, you may have a quota on the virtual CPU of 100 total, and if you try to exceed that number, deploying, for instance, 105 or 101 even, so the system blocks your operation, you receive an error. So while the total budgets in terms of unit is, let's say, an average of your usage all over the year, and you can have spikes, or you can decide how to consume this budget. It can be even in a flat and constant way. That is up to you on for what you require. So the type of resources that are accounted are the usage of the virtual machine, including the usage of CPU and RAM, all type of storage, which can be disk volumes that are attached to the virtual machine, or object storage, so the known S3 buckets, but can be even a share file system. So these are the volumes that could be attached to multiple VMs. We account also for the GPU usage, and that corresponds to a particular plan flavor of virtual machine configuration that includes also the access to a GPU card. So all this information and also all the available plan and the corresponding hourly price in terms of this billing unit are available in our dedicated documentation, either for ECMWF and EUMETSAT. Can be reached at this address that is available either on the main EWC website or under the Morpheus interface in the top menu, or even in our knowledge base documentation. So from that, let's say the user of the accounting tool can access these accounting dashboards, and we provide two main dashboards. So the computing representative dashboards, which provides an overview on the annual budget and consumption, and the tenant dashboards with more detailed information about the usage. Both computing representative and the tenant administrator can access both of the dashboards, but the tenant administrator, of course, in the computing representative dashboard, can see only the data, the information related to the tenancy that they administer, while the comp rep can see all the data and information on all the tenancies that belong to his respective country. So the dashboards look like these. So they are provided with different panels that show the utilization of different resources. You can also filter on the time to see, let's say, the usage on SR for a certain period. And you can review the total consumption in terms of unit against the budget, and also review the quota and the actual usage of resources. Plus, you have additional information, including also time series. So all of these are included in the documentation in our knowledge base that are provide additional information for the accounting. So as I mentioned earlier, any user for a specific need might request also an update of the provided quota or budget. and you can submit this request through the support portal. So this request might be, let's say, reviewed and approved by the computing representative, and once that happens, we can proceed as a support team to implement these updates. So now let's pass to provide this demo about the tenant administration interface. I will start basically with an overview of the functions that might be of interest for a tenant administrator, or at least a reminder because it can be useful to share with other tenancy users, and also a review of the administration tabs that are available. So now let's start with this demo. I will start with Cypher. Cypher is basically a place within Morpheus where you can store information in a secret way. So by default, a tenant admin can decrypt the S3 access and secret key, and also can share them to other users, but can also add additional secret. It can be password or whatever other secret, and that can be useful either to keep them in that single place, or leverage it, retrieve it from the automation tool from Morpheus. So this is a good tool that is available for the administration of the tenancy. So under infrastructure network, you can have access to the security group. Security group basically are a sort of firewall that is applicable to a target instance, to a virtual machine, which defines basically the ingress or egress traffic to the virtual machine with dedicated rules. You can specify source, protocols, and destination. We provide already some default ones, but also you can create as a tenant administrator additional one, like in this example. So I will be creating a security group that provide access to HTTPS traffic. So this security group can be either let's say used at creation time or attached to a VM later on. So you target cloud, and then the security group is created, as you can see. If you click on it, you will see that at the beginning, this security group is empty, and you need to add the rules that correspond to that security group. So, and for that, you can also provide, let's say, a name here, and then a direction, ingress or egress. And then also you can set up a custom rule where you can specify the protocol, if either TCP, UDP, or SMP, port range, and also the source type can be a network or a single IP. In this example, we'll show how to provide access to the full internet. And then also the destination port instance. Destination type is basically just the instance, which can be a virtual machine. Then you press Save Changes, and then the security group will be created. So you can add, of course, multiple rules to a single security groups and customize it as you prefer. As I mentioned, so these can be also attached or use it to existing VM, or use it at VM creation. But in that case, you can select only one. So to attach it to an existing instance, you need to go under Network, Security Groups, and then you can press Edit Security Group, and you can retrieve the just created security group and add it to your instance. So this security group mechanism, a reminder, is also on top of the local firewall that you might have on the virtual machine. So this is another tool that helps you to restrict traffic. So under infrastructure trust key pairs, instead, I will show you how to import SSH key pair. And this is useful to get access to the created virtual machine on the cloud with your corresponding user. You can have, let's say, you can just import your public key, like I'm doing now, while the private key is just used for if you need to get access from Morpheus to GitHub, for instance, or other services. But for getting access just to the virtual machine is enough, the public key, and then you press Save and you created it. Then you need to go under your user settings and customize the Linux setting area to specify for your user the SSH key that you want to use. You press the one that you just created and then press save. And at this point, you are ready to deploy and create virtual machines and get access to them. I remind that we keep disabled the password authentication, so you need to do this step before creating virtual machine. So now let's access a virtual machine and show you how to provide a floating IP to a VM that has just the private IP. You can see here it's connected just to a private network and doesn't have access to the as a public with a public IP. So you need to go under Resources tab, and then on the right side you have a menu where you can attach a floating IP. Here you need to select the external internet that provides a public IP, and then you press Execute it. Then you need to just wait for a little while, and after some time you will see that Morpheus will start showing your public IP that has been attached, and you can see it here. On the right menu now you can also detach this floating IP. You can perhaps reuse it for other instances if needed, or release it. And you can see it again here. So this is a good reminder in case you deploy the virtual machine with just a private one. At ECMWF, I remind you can also attach the external internet NIC in case you want to deploy a public IP. So now let's review the administration tabs. So let's start with the roles one. You can find two default roles, one for tenant administrator and one for user, which is basically the same without admin privileges. Clicking on it, you can see there is a big list of permissions that are applied to every features and service that is provided available within Morpheus, plus also access to instance type, blueprints, and other features of Morpheus that might be of interest or not for your case. So you can also assign these roles to other users, but you can also create your custom one by pressing the button Create Role. In this case, you can also start and inherit the permission from an existing role. You just have to provide a name, press Save Changes, and in this case, your role has been created. You will see that now in the right columns, you have the possibility to fine-tune and customize the access to the different resources and services. It can be full or none, or just read when the option allows. So, and then you can also use this role to be provided to a certain user. And now let's see the user tab. So here under Identity Source, I remind you that you can see the tenancy identifier, tenancy name, and also the URL for accessing directly to that. If you want to create a user, just press the button Create User, and then provide first and last name, username for accessing Morpheus, and then also email address. The user can also then later on decide for if checking receive notification or not. In the roles tab, you can also, as I mentioned, apply a certain role, then set up an initial password. And the Linux setting, which are basically used for getting access to the created virtual machine, can be even custom, let's say, fulfilled later by the user. So the user has been created, and here I can show you another features interesting for tenant administrator. Under the More button, there is the possibility to impersonate another user. That can be, let's say, relevant and useful in case you want to debug and see what a user is seeing, or also to perform some action on behalf of that user. So now let's proceed with another tab, which is the integration. It was already mentioned in past webinars. There are several options of features that you can use, but the most, let's say, used one is to integrate a Git repo, and especially the Ansible repository. This was used in the past two training webinar to leverage this option in conjunction with the automation tool provided in Morpheus in order to set up a dedicated workflow and task. And that can be used also to create a custom instance type and custom blueprint. I will invite you to refer to the past webinars to get, let's say, more information about these features. So if you use that and the automation tool from Morpheus, you can, as I mentioned, set up a custom instance type or templates available in Morpheus. And as a tenant admin, you can also decide to provide access to a certain role to this custom instance type, as I'm showing here, and then provide the dedicated role to the user that intend to access to these templates. So proceeding under administration, there is the policies tab. So policies are basically a useful way to fine-tune the control on certain resources and services or Morpheus. You can see there is a big list of options that you can combine also and apply them to either a user or a set of a group or a cloud. In this example, I will create a policy to define a maximum number of core or CPU for a specific user. So I will set a limit of 4 core for a specific user. I will select the user, so I just create a tenant user, and I press Save Changes, and my policy is here created. So now let's go and try if this policy works well. And let's try the deployment of a virtual machine that exceed what was allowed by that policy. I will just provide the minimum number of parameters to create a new virtual machine, and then press Next. You will see that I can also choose the suggested plan with 16 core, so that is exceeding my policy that allows just 4, and then I can try to press Next. You will see that here Morpheus recognized that the policy was exceeded by 12 for the cores and provides an error. So now let's retry with something that is still allowed by my policy with 4. And then in this case, you will see that Morpheus let me proceed with the deployment of my instance. I can review the information and then I will press complete. And the deployment is starting. So you might consider the usage of this policy in case you have a big tenancy and you want to fine-tune access to certain resources. So let's last tab under administration are the settings. So there are the possibility to further customize your settings of your tenancy. In this case, it's just an example. Also set up a custom logo and appearance of the Morpheus interface for you and your user. So with that, I concluded the demonstration. I will pass the word to Uroosa for the rest part, for the remaining part of the webinar.
Yeah, thank you, Roberto. Thank you for the presentation. So my name is Uroosa Farooq. I work for the user support services at EWC from the EUMETSAT side. So before taking you to the some specific EUMETSAT related features, I would also like to explain that at EWC we also have object storage, that is S3 buckets, so which mainly takes you to the S3 credentials for the tenant admins who administers the tenancy. So basically we have the S3 access and secret key, which if you are a tenant admin, you can find it in Cypher and tool, and from there you can decrypt and use it for your S3 buckets. In case if you need additional S3 credentials for read-only or read-write access, you can request it from our EWC support. So that's about S3 credential. Moving on, we have EUMETSAT, at our EUMETSAT side, we have, whenever we provide you the tenancy, there are some pre-configured virtual machines which you get. So we have our default stack, which has LDAP, SSH, and X2Go. So once you log into the tenancy, this is how it looks like. So in the next in the next slide, I have explained the explanation of the LDAP, SSH, and X2Go. So taking you to the next slide. So I have explained like what are these meant for. So LDAP is meant for the user management. Basically, this is used to manage the user. So we also have our internal DNS here. So we always recommend you to not to delete it and keep it, because if you delete, none of the virtual machine you create will not be enrolled. So it has internal DNS. So in case if you want to have additional users like LDAP users for to log into the VMs, you have to go inside the LDAP and create the users and manage, give the privilege and all the customization you need for the users. You can manage it under LDAP. So the next one has the SSH. So basically SSH is for the security. It acts as a intermediary layer between the internal machines as well as the external network. So in the EUMETSAT side, we recommend you to use the private network. And if you want to connect this internal VM externally, basically you have to SSH it using this SSH proxy as a jump host, and then log into your internal VM. So this SSH also has the fail to ban to prevent your force brute attack. So it has attached there. So even I would recommend not to delete this as well. And moving on, we also have the remote desktop, that is the third one. So basically this is for your normal graphical experience. So once you download the X2Go client, you can launch it and create a session. Basically here you have to provide your remote desktop IP, as you can see from the screenshot there. It's your username, your remote desktop IP, and then you have to jump it through the SSH. So basically you provide the SSH proxy IP, and then you can connect to the remote desktop. And moving on, here once you launch it, you can use this remote desktop to manage your graphical normal graphical experience. So I would like to specify the two of the user types. So Roberto has already mentioned the Morpheus user and how to create it in his video. In EUMETSAT side, we also have one of the user, it's LDAP users. So the main difference between Morpheus user as well as LDAP user is Morpheus users are able to log into the Morpheus and perform all the tasks inside the Morpheus. But when you have to log into the VM, so you have to create your LDAP user, and then from there you can manage the user. So basically, this slide says you how to create a Morpheus user. So you log in and go to the tenant administration, and then from administration you can go to the users, and when you hit create users, there is this specific information you have to enter. So once you fill all this information and roles, as Roberto mentioned, we have two roles, tenant admin role and EWC cloud user role. So whatever is your use case, you can give it. And if you give the password expired, so once you share the credential to the new user, so at the first login, it will ask you to change the password. So the next user is the LDAP user. So here, so as I said, this user is important to log into the VMs, what you created in the Morpheus. So basically you have to go inside the LDAP machine, which is the default stack. So once you are inside the machine, so you will see this action tab. So there you can select the run workflow and create a new LDAP user. Once you hit that, it will ask you for some of the information. So you have to fill in the information. So create the user, give the first name, last name, and username. So public SSH key is very important here. So you have to attach your SSH keys when creating the LDAP user. So, and then the initial password is up to you. It's not mandatory, but if you want, you can give it. But we highly recommend you to use the public SSH key for the key-based authentication and not use the password-based authentication. So for all the LDAP users, once you create it, the sudo privileges will not be automatically added. So you have to either manually add it via CLI or web interface. So that I have explained in the next slide. So how to add the sudo for the LDAP users via web browser interface. So the tenant admin can be able to access the cipher. These are the secrets where we store. So we have there our admin username and admin password stored there. So you can decrypt the information, and you can use this to give the sudo privileges to other users. So once you take the note of this, you can, for the web browser interface, you can just go to the X2Go client as I showed you in the previous slide. So once you logged in, you have to launch the Firefox. So after launching it, either you type the LDAP IP address or the LDAP domain address, which the domain is also stored in Cypher tools. So from there you can find your domain. So once you're inside the free IPA, so from policy, you can actually create your own sudo rule. So in case if you want to allow all the users present inside the tenancy to have the sudo rule, you can give the allow all. Or if you want to customize it only for the few users, you can select the certain users, which I have showed in the next slide. So from here, once you select the policy, give the name of the policy, and then you can create your own rule. You can customize it by going to the who section, and then from there you can add your users who wants to have the sudo accesses, and then you can configure it according to your use case and hit save. So once it is saved, after waiting for a few minutes, it will take some time to get these changes. So after waiting for a few minutes, this particular user will get the access to the sudo. Now moving on, we also have, this is about the web interface, how to add the how to give the privileges to the LDAP user. So via CLI you can also do this. So you first have to log into the LDAP machine. So once you're inside the machine, either on Morpheus or in the terminal, once you're inside the machine, you first have to check if there is the group which is existing. If there is a group, and if the sudo rule, if it is already there in the tenancy, then you don't need to create, you just have to add your users. But if you do not have both of them, then you have to create a sudo rule, and then you add the sudo rule to the group, and then you can add the LDAP user like by IPA group add member, and then you can add the sudo rule to the group. And you can verify the group membership as well as the sudo rule. So you can also test the sudo access by login to the user, and you can, when you run the sudo who am I, so it will show you that it will confirm you that you have the access to the sudo. So moving on, in the next slide. So this is like a important part of the EUMETSAT side. So here to add the SSH keys. So right now we are enhanced our security measures. So we urge our users to use the security protocols like using the SSH keys instead of password for the authentication. So it reduces the risk. So in order to add the single key addition, so you can easily add it. If you have forgot to add attach this SSH keys while creating the LDAP user, you can do this way. So you can directly add it by using IPA user mode inside your LDAP machine, and you can attach the SSH public key if you have single key. If you have multiple keys and you're logging from different machines, that is also possible. You just have to add these keys with the comma separated ones. So that's how you add your keys. So please kindly do this instead of password authentication. So yeah, so that's about it. So to end this, we have our contacts and references. You can scan the barcode, or you can visit this site. So our European Weather Cloud site is also online. So you can use this URL to go in directly into the website. So we have our support platform at support.europeanweather.cloud in case if you have any request or if you need help. So you get official support from us from here. If you want to raise a ticket, you can raise a request from there. And we do have our discussion platform called Rocket Chat. So it's under https chat.europeanweather.cloud. So there we have different kinds of groups already there, and everybody from EUMETSAT and ECMWF are available there. So in case if you have any quick questions, you can always ask us there. So we have different groups for peer support and general channel where we update all our if anything happens inside the EWC, we update there as well. So you can check it out. And yeah, last but not the least, we have the knowledge base. So here it's our Confluence page where whatever we have discussed here, like since from the beginning to the end, everything is documented, or most of it is documented, and you can find it in our knowledge base under the Confluence page. Also, there is also a blogs, so you will get the updates from the EWC sites. So yeah, so that's about it. I think we covered what was most requested, and we also have our previous webinars recorded, so you can, it is also posted online, so you can go check it out. And yeah, this is also recorded, this will also be published. So yeah, in case if you have any questions, I will leave the platform here for the discussion, or in case if you have questions later, so you can reach us by any of our support platform or discussion platform. Yeah, thank you.
We stop sharing so that I can see as well if there is something on the chat. So I see one question from Pierre, I think. It was on the chat. It was, are user settings propagated from Morpheus to existing virtual machines? So in this case, unfortunately not. So this is as soon as you apply new configuration, which can be the SSH key that we've shown, that is valid for newly created virtual machines. However, there are also ways to, let's say, to implement, to update existing virtual machines. And one convenient one is also leverage the automation tools of Morpheus, which can be, you can create a task, which can be a simple bash scripts where you can update, let's say, user configuration, or you can even create users in this way, and you are flexible to do whatever a bash script can allow to do. Okay, so and then of course at EUMETSAT side you can update it if you are using LDAP, you can update it in a central way using editing the LDAP side. So I think I see there is a raised hand from Antonio Vocino.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roberto. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Nice to see you. Thank you again for your support and the information provided here, also the recent updates. Just a few questions, if I may. An information related to, okay, I saw the presentation, the last presentation. Personally, I am the tenant administrator of a couple of tenants, the one in EUMETSAT, on EUMETSAT side, another one on a new ECMWF side. So I can experience both. Just to mention that X2Go on EUMETSAT side, I discovered in the very beginning a bug in case of virtual machines equipped with the GPU. So I personally moved to the VNC system to use remote administration and remote connection to the machine. In that case, I don't know if it relates to the operating system used at that time. It was at the very beginning, so I didn't check with new ones, but could still exist such kind of bug in case of only GPU kind of virtual machine. Maybe there are conflicts between the drivers of the X server and the drivers of GPU. I mean, I don't know, but this is just a marginal problem. My questions are more related instead to the use of Morpheus for the fact that we are kind of obliged to use public IP address, even though with floating option just for administrating virtual machine through Morpheus, or we could just use internal IP network. And so because at the beginning you told me that it was mandatory to have a public address, but just to present the virtual machine to Morpheus interface. I don't know if something is different now.
So I will reply to this last question, and then I will leave EUMETSAT colleague if they want to comment about the X2Go for GPU.
Yeah, thank you.
So regarding, let's say, the public IP, as I mentioned earlier, we invite also in the ECMWF side to reduce as much as possible the usage of the public IP. However, to get inside the private network of a tenancy, you need at least one virtual machine that has both either access via the public interface and also the private one to act as a gateway for the rest of the virtual machine. So as I commented in one of the suggestions, so preferably in both sites, you should reduce the number of public IP as much as needed. And also the only difference is that at the ECMWF side we provided so we left the user to decide if they want to implement this setup. So to have, let's say, to deploy a first machine that acts as a gateway, and then the rest of the VM with private network only. While at EUMETSAT side, this comes with, let's say, default setup that was mentioned by Uroosa, where they have already pre-deployed this SSH proxy VM. But basically, this SSH proxy VM can be just also created at ECMWF side by the user itself with both public and private interface, and the rest of the VM can be created privately. Other tenancy user also, I'm aware that experimented other option and tried, for instance, the teleport setup. That is also a setup that we have at ECMWF for getting access to the other services like HPC. And I'm aware that some user experimented that in their own tenancy to get access to the secure way to their own private VM. So to conclude, I mean, to recap, so the invite is always to reduce public IP as much as possible, to secure them with the secure connection and firewalling, regulating the traffic, and yeah, that's it. And I don't know for the other question if EUMETSAT colleague has any update on or receive aware about this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the feedback and reporting this. It's actually quite interesting one. The original way of usage, how we envisaged the usage of X2Go was that while users can take connection to that machine and then connect to other virtual machines, for example, containing GPUs. Basically, what I can now say is that if I understood correctly, you are using X2Go instance type for GPUs. So that's something what we have to test and see if that's got better and how that will work. At least improve the documentation. Let's see if we can fix the underlying issue as well. Thank you for reporting.
You're welcome. Just if I may just add the final comment on, regarding GPU-equipped virtual machine, which is it's our greatest concern about the deployment of these facilities, especially for machine learning application. I experienced the fact that the CUDA driver version is, of course, I mean, I can understand that it's kind of frozen within the pre-allocatable virtual machine. I mean the Rocky or Ubuntu version we have at the moment. But this, in principle, could impact the development of application, because CUDA is a very strong constraint related to the version of, for example, Python application we can use with machine learning in particular. So CUDA driver is a bit old with respect to the recent updates that you can see. This could affect the development application. I don't know if you have in plan to regularly update the CUDA driver, because the hardware behind is, of course, is state of art, but the CUDA driver is a bit behind.
Yes, I can start. Maybe Roberto can continue, but we have acknowledged that, and the limitation comes from that CUDA driver needs to be also compatible with the underlying GPUs and drivers. And the other and acknowledging that it works other way around as well. So if the CUDA driver is too new, for example, transfer learning and using existing architectures and code models got from the community, might not work. We are updating regularly, but not necessary in the very edge of the development. There are some freedom for users to install their specific version of CUDA driver. That is possible within some limits, but that is quite expert use case, and we basically don't recommend it. But as you said, sometimes it is really necessary, and in those cases, I would say, if you encounter any problems, please contact our support, and we will help.
Okay, so
I don't know. Yeah.
Also on our side, I can comment that CUDA driver, let's say, are somehow related to the underlying GPU host driver. And for that, on the ECMWF side, we already perform an update on the underlying GPU host, but on the VM templates, we are about to updating also quite soon the new images, including also updated the CUDA drivers. Of course, it should be possible also an update of the existing CUDA, but perhaps it's better to wait and really work directly with the fresh image templates. And the limit that Rupe mentioned is basically related to the underlying GPU host. That for that, if you require a CUDA driver that exceeds a certain mapping of this version, perhaps it might be not fine. The rest should be compatible. And for the Python and other libraries, instead is more flexible, since I mean there is a possibility to use containers or other type of technologies that could help also to overcome this issue. And the fact of using images, as was discussed also in other forum, this predefined set of images was basically related to the need also to keep them under control, keep them secured, and also to avoid that users may import, let's say some configuration that we cannot be able to support or manage in our system. But yeah, for coming back to the GPU, that was the status.
Okay, thank you, Roberto.
Okay, Pierre, I think you have the hand raised since a while. I don't know if you.
Yes, thank you. It's a shorter question, I hope. It's about the credentials for accessing S3 buckets. So I can find the credentials and use the S3 buckets quite easily. But what I would like to be able to do is create a set of credentials for read-only access to the bucket for either users or for setting up access virtual machine where people could just use the data that has been processed already.
Yeah, so for that, it was, let's say, one bullet of Uroosa slide. So basically, we provide the main set of S3 credentials at the tenancy level, but we also offer the option on request to set up additional credentials, which can be even read-only. So read-only or rewrite, so that you don't have to share, let's say, the main one if you have a particular use case that you require. However, I would say that so we choose to do this way since the main S3 credential cover most of the case and they can be shared across the tenancy user. But yeah, we had already cases where we set up sub-users with a dedicated credential with restricted access to read-only.
Okay. And if I have read-only credentials, can I give the credentials directly to a partner so that they could access the bucket without even being logged in to the weather cloud? Or is that impossible?
Yes. No, that is possible. But for that, I would say that is even possible without setting up any credential if you need to get access to a bucket. For that, it's enough to set up a policy on the bucket itself. You can put it an ICL that is public, and you can share your bucket outside, and so that no credentials are needed at all. But of course, if you just need to restrict to a specific entity, in that case, yes, you need the read-only and then also perhaps a bucket policy.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, if there are no more questions, perhaps we can also close. And as was mentioned by Uroosa, we can also, if you have any other questions that may arise later, we invite you to join our discussion platform, Rocket Chat. There are a general channel or a peer support where you can have raise the question. We can have a discussion even there. Or if you have issues, and you can raise also support ticket in case. Okay, so thanks everyone for attending, and then see you to the next webinars. Or now I catch the opportunity to remind you that we'll be planning a user workshop in November. So in case, keep an eye on the news and events so that as soon as we open registration, you might join. So thanks again, and see you next time.